It's Checkmate. This December, the truth will be known once and for all. Buckle up, folks, because this week we are diving in deep. Just a month ago in episode 38, we proved the Earth was round without a doubt. But there are those in the flat Earth community that still doubt our findings. I know what you're thinking, flat Earth. Why is this guy even talking about it? Well, let me explain. The flat Earth model of our Earth is well thought out. It goes way deep, and trust me, whatever your argument, I promise the flat Earth community will have an answer to that argument. Give them some credit, and let's not be guilty of canceling something we don't fully comprehend, and that's why I'm here. Let me help you understand. It's time for Flat Earth 101. In the flat Earth model, we live on a flat circle that is encompassed by the 300-foot ice wall that is Antarctica. So no, you're never going to sail off the edge of the Earth. The Antarctica ice wall keeps the oceans contained. And beyond the Antarctic coast is the firmament, a solid clear dome that encompasses and covers the entire Earth. The flat Earth does not spin, rather the sun, moon, stars, planets, everything out there in space, they all orbit above us within the firmament. And this of course means that our universe is much smaller and closer than we are led to believe. Now I'm going to just assume that most of you are familiar with the globe model of the Earth. But before you start making flat Earth jokes, just know that there is some real science behind the flat Earth model. And there are many that believe the Bible indicates that the Earth is flat. But is it really flat? No, I don't believe so, and I believe we proved it a month ago. But if only there was a way to once and for all prove the Earth's shape, one way or another, a way to end the debate once and for all parties concerned. Enter Will Duffy in the final experiment. Now, I'm going to let Will explain his experiment himself in this episode. But before we get to this week's guest, let me give you a visual illustration of what will be discussed. Here is a model of the flat Earth. Now, notice how the sun and moon orbit as the Earth is still, and notice how day and night are shown on the flat Earth model. Thanks to the late Rob Skiba, we have this clever illustration of the seasons on a flat Earth. As you can see, during the summer solstice, which will happen on June 20th, 2025, the sun will be as close to the North Pole as it ever gets, causing a 24-hour sun. You've all heard of the never-setting sun in the summer at the North Pole, right? Well, this is how it happens on the flat Earth map. But it also happens on a globe as illustrated by this video from the California Academy of Sciences. Our Earth's rotational axis is tilted, which gives us our seasons. During the summer solstice, you can clearly see why the North Pole would have a 24-hour sun. But what happens at the South Pole in the land of Antarctica in December during the solstice? As you can see on the flat Earth model, there can be no 24-hour sun in Antarctica during the winter solstice, which will happen on December 21st of this year. But on a round Earth model, it's clear that at this time there should be a 24-hour sun. This simple observation was cleverly noted by Will Duffy, and so he contacted 24 globalists and 24 flat earthers to join him this coming December in Antarctica to simply observe the truth. Either there is a 24-hour sun or there is not. This December, the truth will be known once and for all. And this, my friends, is the final experiment.
Are you not curious?
Preparing to transfer the Ryan files. Now.
I present to you, with great intrigue and wonder, the Ryan Files.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is awesome. He has made a name for himself in investment and finance over the years, becoming a millionaire at the age of 33, I guess, and that's awesome. But he's also a pastor, and he is the man behind the final experiment. This is awesome, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome to the Ryan Files, the one and only Will Duffy.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome, man. So, number one, I'm excited that you came on here. I did a video about a month ago, and you commented on it. Ironically enough, I called the episode The Experiment and whatnot, never knowing about the final experiment. And this is your baby, man. And I tell you what, it's so awesome, Will, because it is, it's checkmate, you know? One way or another, we're going to know in December. So without going into too much, I mean, just get into it, man. How did you come about doing this? What's the thought process of getting you into this flat Earth universe, and then coming up with the idea of the final experiment? Because that to me is absolutely brilliant. So take it away.
Yeah, so my personality is I like to have like finality and definitive answers to things. And so I'm actually fine just in general being wrong about something and being proven wrong about something because I really do just want truth. And so in this debate over the shape of the earth, whether we live on a globe or whether we live on a flat earth, flat stationary earth, it was fascinating to me first to find out that flat earth was real. And I have to thank a friend of mine. She posted about flat earth on Facebook, which made me realize that it's alive and well and it's growing and that people are not joking. They really do believe that we live on a flat stationary plane. But anyway, so I kind of watched all the debates and all the discussions and all the evidence going back and forth. And then there's a lot of vitriol going back and forth between people. And I thought to myself, man, I would love some finality on this, but not just for myself. What if I could somehow come up with an idea to give finality to everybody? And so I came up with the final experiment, which is pretty simple. On a globe, you have a North Pole and a South Pole. So on a globe, if you go north of the equator, things get smaller. And then if you go south of the equator, things get smaller. On a flat Earth, you have something similar to the globe with the North Pole. As you get closer to the North Pole, your concentric circles of east and west get smaller. But as you go further south, things get bigger, and you can't have a South Pole. So there's some truth to be had in Antarctica, which is either on a flat Earth, this ice wall that kind of encompasses all of the other continents on our world and holds all the water in, or on the globe side, it's actually like an island continent at the bottom of the globe. And I spent a lot of time with Antarctica and realized the easiest thing that we'd be able to do would be to figure out what the sun does in Antarctica. Because on the flat Earth model, the sun in the south is making, really big circles around the world in that circuit during the southern summer. But on the globe model, you would have what's called a 24-hour sun, where the sun never sets in Antarctica for long periods of time. So I thought to myself, wow, that's an easy one. We can't manipulate the path of the sun. We can't hide the sun. And so we're going to go to Antarctica and see if the sun sets, which would be required on the flat Earth model, or see if we have a 24-hour sun, which would be required on the globe model, and hopefully settle this debate once and for all.
Hopefully is the key word, right?
Yes.
I often, as I go through this thing, man, I'll tell you honestly, as a Christian, we're always going to have kind of a Christian viewpoint from the Ryan Files, a Christian perspective of the world. But what's really interesting, Will, is that when I was first told about this flat Earth thing, I think like everyone, when you first hear it, you're just kind of like, huh, what? But what's interesting is you start diving into it, and there's certain things about it that are kind of compelling, kind of make sense, kind of like juggle your mind. That in combination with a number of people that, I've listened to and whatnot. Rob Skiba is a perfect example. God bless him. He passed away a few years ago. Rob Skiba is a perfect example where he was very convicted that we live on a flat Earth. And I loved listening to Rob Skiba, all the stuff he did with Genesis 6, the Watchers and Nephilim, all that stuff. I really enjoyed it. But he kind of went, I'm not going to say down a rabbit hole. I mean, I don't mean any disrespect when I say that, but he dove in. It was a deep dive. And as I listened to him, it really was awesome because it gave me the opportunity to start questioning, okay, what do I believe? What do I know, and why do I know it? And I realized, just like anything else, I'm told as I grow up that I live on a round earth. And outside of that, and you start getting into certain things, and there are always ways to debunk it. I mean, the flat earth people are awesome at debunking everything. And, that's kind of cool. Forgive my cat, by the way. This happens every episode. I'm so sorry. Fan, there you go, girl.
No problem. Yeah, Rob Skiba, if he was still around, would have definitely received an invitation to participate in the final experiment. Interestingly enough, now that I've created the final experiment, I've heard from so many people, and a guy reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, Will, you're not going to believe this, but many years ago, I actually offered to pay for Rob Skiba to go to Antarctica." And I was like, wow, that's super fascinating. Nothing came of it. Not exactly sure why, but this idea has, been kind of thrown around over the years, and I'm finally bringing it to reality.
Yeah, and I don't ever want to get in an argument with you, Will. I've watched you just, and what's really cool is you're kind of even keeled. I love the fact, and it really shows when you're talking to people that you're really not interested. Ego has nothing to do with it. It's like, let's just get to the truth. And I find it very interesting, man, almost heartbreaking, as a Christian, like I said, where there are a number of pastors, some of which you've had interviews with, and I've watched them. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I believe that the earth is round, okay? I believe we live on a globe. I just did an experiment which, in my viewpoint, clearly demonstrates that it is a globe. We had a flat earther there with us, and he was like, well, yeah, I guess it's kind of round. But that being said, man, this flat earth thing, what's so intriguing about it is that it has latched itself to Christianity almost. Maybe the Bible is a better word. I believe the Bible is, it creates a clear path of how human beings can be redeemed and saved through Jesus Christ. Okay, but I find it very almost disturbing, Will, that there's some guys out there that are saying, "Hey, listen, we live on a flat Earth. The Bible says we live on a flat Earth. If you don't believe we live on a flat earth, you obviously don't believe the Bible. Therefore, how can you be a Christian?" And then boom, we're into a whole next level, argument, so to speak. And I saw Rob Skiba kind of going down that path. You just had a recent interview with a gentleman, I can't recall his name, but he certainly let everybody know in the first 2 minutes of the video how smart he was. Which is great. Far smarter than me. I'm as dumb as I look. But he argued every point, but he had every argument. But like at the end of the day, Will, isn't this more about a battle for souls than it is about a battle for our flat or round Earth? I don't know.
Yeah, it is. And you bring up an interesting point, because there's a huge difference between arguing that something the Bible says happened in the past,
right,
versus arguing that the Bible's telling us something that we can look at today, right? So,
right.
For example, if there's a king that the Bible mentions and says this man was a king and he reigned for these years in this geographic area. Right. I'm just making this up. If the Bible says that and you want to argue, okay, we don't have any evidence of this yet, we haven't found any evidence, but we do believe that the Bible is true and that this man was real and he really was a king at that time frame, that's fine.
Right.
Because, we're constantly digging and making new discoveries with archaeology, and so we might end up figuring out, finding evidence for that king. But there's a difference when you want to take the Bible and say, well, I'm going to interpret the Bible in such a way to where what a majority of people believe about our world is wrong. That's an interesting dilemma, because what I think is going to happen is I think you're going to have people say, well, I have eyes and I believe we live on a globe. And if the Bible, if you're telling me that the Bible says that we don't live on a globe, well, then you're telling me the Bible is wrong, and they'll just disregard the entire Bible. So that's a little bit more of a dangerous position to take,
Right.
which I think people take too easily. Now, if we do live on a flat Earth, I will be happy to admit that, even if I'm in the minority. But I want to make sure we do something first before making up our minds that will make both sides happy, both the globe side and the flat Earth side, that, okay, we've settled it.
Yeah, and man, listen, as a Christian, it is one of those things that is, listen, it makes it almost easier to believe in God. You live in a terrarium, there has to be a creator, all right? And now all of a sudden, evolution out the window, the Big Bang out the window, aliens from another galaxy out the window. And so, and that's my buddy who's a flat Earth guy. Prior to this experiment we did, he was like, man, it actually, believing the Earth was flat almost brought me closer to God, because I felt like he's right there, So it's an interesting concept that, and listen, I make no bones about this. If I really wanted to have a channel with, 500,000 people, I would start talking about the flat Earth, and I would be dogged about saying the Earth is flat, because that community is one of the most loyal, dogmatic, and won't listen to any reason. And if you're a champion of their cause, you will only be elevated in your status and stature. I mean, there's a number of people that you've talked to, Eric Dubay, and a number of people. They have a massive following, and it's because they'll say it. They'll throw it out there, whether it's true or not. And that video where you debunked Eric Dubay was a piece of work, and very, very nice and calm in how you went about it. But so it's just interesting. But the thing that bothers me, and listen, Eric Dubay, go do it. I don't know if Eric Dubay is a Christian or not, but
He's not.
These pastors, Dean Odell and the gentleman you just talked to recently, a number of guys are known more for their flat Earth stance than they are for, bringing souls into the kingdom. I'm thinking to myself, if I'm a pastor, okay, man, and if I really believe the Earth is flat, I've got a trump card of like, listen, you live in a terrarium. It's obvious, like there is a creator, and that would be my focus, maybe, rather than going out and trying to prove that the Earth is flat. And in that process, I think you turn some people off. What happens if we go down to Antarctica during the final experiment, Will, and we find out the Earth is a globe?
Mm-hmm.
How much does that ruin their testimony there, and how much does it make people say, oh, these Christians, off their rocker? These are things I just think about that concern me, because it is, for whatever reason, it's such a divisive topic. And I don't know, what do you think about all that as a pastor yourself? I mean, how do you parse all that?
Yeah. So if someone came up to me and said, hey, Will, if there's a terrarium, if there's a firmament, if we have a glass dome over us, then there has to be a God. Here's my response. People are not going to necessarily understand my response, which is fine. I have told people, and this isn't directed at you, but I've told people, if they want to talk to me about this, if they want to argue with me about this, I'm totally open, but let's just do that after the final experiment is over. But my response is simply this. I think if we have an Earth, there has to be a God. Nice. So, and that's really my position. The idea that either, because I think there's only two choices here. The idea that either something came from nothing or something always existed and exploded into the universe that we have. Neither of those sound very plausible or logical or reasonable to me. I do think I do think there's always going to be a desire by the world to look for alternative explanations for origins other than God. And I get it, but at the same time, I think they are guilty of eliminating God before the conversation starts.
Right.
And maybe we're guilty on our side of eliminating naturalistic explanations before the conversation starts. And so I want to kind of say, no, we need to look at all these options and we need to say which one makes the most sense. And for me, a creator and a designer of our world makes the most sense to me.
Absolutely. And I think it takes as much faith to believe in something out of nothing, or a big bang, or creation, a creator. I think it takes as much faith to believe one as the other. There's faith.
Yeah.
There's faith no matter what. And it is ironic how it gets changed. You know, it's like at one point, man, you know, the idea of a creator is insane. You idiot. What are you talking about? But now it's okay because it's transpermia and it's aliens seeded the earth. That's okay, but it just can't be a god. And I think it's, you know, because you would have to recognize that there might be a relationship required there, you know?
Yeah, relationship, accountability, absolutely. It's all very, very important. And you're right. The issues we're talking about, these spiritual issues, really do transcend our day-to-day life and even our physical life on Earth. If we are eternal beings, which I believe we are, there's a lot more of our life that's going to happen after we spend our time here on Earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. A little thing called eternity, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So let me ask you a couple of questions about the final experiment. All right. Number one, you're going to Antarctica. All right. Immediately, for every conspiracy theorist in the world, it's like, oh, you just said the A word, Antarctica. You know, of course, there's alien bases and there's secret government bases, and all the Nazis from World War II went down there, and then you have the Admiral Byrd thing that happened down in Antarctica, off the coast of Antarctica. How does all of that come into play, or does it not whatsoever?
Yeah, so the final experiment has really changed the conversation. It's very obvious to me, and I think it's obvious to most people. If it's not, once I say this, it will be. The conversation for years, coming from the flat Earth side, was, you know, Antarctica is this place that's protected. It's government protected. You can't go there. You can't explore it. If you attempt to go there, you'll be stopped or, you know, arrested or detained. And once it started getting out that, you know, you can just kind of pay to go vacation there, then the conversation changed to, well, they're just taking you to the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula and you're not really going that far south. Well, the final experiment has changed the conversation significantly. That argument is not made anymore by people. I follow comments on our videos, comments on other people's videos. I get tons of emails, and those types of comments happened at the very beginning. Like, Will, what do you mean you're going to Antarctica in December? You're not allowed. And just through my releasing of videos talking about the company we're using, Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions, all of a sudden the flat earthers are like, okay, never mind. Not only can you go to Antarctica, you can go there by boat, you can go there by plane, you can go very deep. They used to say you can't go past 60 south parallel. And it's like, no, we're going to almost 80 degrees south. So now they're having to deal with, okay, you can go to Antarctica, it's just expensive. In the Eric Dubé video, I explained you can actually go alone. So this idea that you can't independently explore is false. You can go to Antarctica independently. And when you're there independently, you can explore. The people that do these, you know, navigations across Antarctica, obviously there's going to be a debate there as to where they actually traveled, but they are alone. And since they're traversing Antarctica, they're independently exploring it. So this has been a significant positive benefit of the final experiment is changing the conversation and the arguments to where people now know you actually can go to Antarctica, and it's now turned it into the sun and what the sun will do. Plus, a lot of people are contacting me saying, Will, the true test of what we live on is to see if you can fly over Antarctica. So, for example, leave South America, fly south, and end up in Australia or New Zealand. So, I will say this to those people: that is a valid experiment, and it sounds fun, but the final experiment is also valid. And so it's a little bit of distraction and obfuscation. And again, I'm all about doing these things. So these people that are telling me they don't like what I'm doing, great. You go do something. You go put something together. You go raise the funds. You pay for it yourself, whatever. We need more of this, not less of this. And so I'm just super excited. I do think this is way harder to put together than people can imagine. So many moving parts that I'm juggling, trying to get people to commit, getting everything scheduled with the travel and the logistics. It's a ton of work. It's kind of become a full-time deal for me, which I didn't have that much extra time. But
Right.
I do think it's going to be historic, and I think it will be talked about for generations. And I think after December, it will be rare to have a discussion about the shape of the Earth where what happens in Antarctica, which we will video and hopefully live stream. I think it'll have to be mentioned, and it will always be mentioned.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know the future, but I am excited to see what happens from this.
Yeah, and I'm going to be there watching. Trust me, along the way. Please make sure. Obviously, you know this already, but please make sure there is zero wiggle room in the video. There's a number of videos out there, but that's an edit. That's an edit, and therefore, everything is bath water and the baby out the door.
Right.
And it just, and no matter what, and I could be wrong about this. I hope I am wrong about this. I hope I'm not being just pessimistic. I feel like no matter what happens, there will be that group of people who will always say, nope, it's still flat. And God bless them. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it was really awesome. Just in my experience with the little experiment that I did, when we did it, I mean, it was like a slap across the face. It was like, oh, yeah, it's round. We figured out the math in advance, and we're able to just, by that math, boom, we hit a balloon 23 and a half feet off the surface of the water, 5.5 miles away. That was all predictable based upon the calculations of the size of the Earth and therefore the curve and everything. And it was like, wow, that pretty much says it for me. Not only that, but just the observation on the opposite shoreline of the laser, where I'm shooting the laser flat or sometimes even lower than level. But from their perspective on the other shoreline, it looks like I'm shooting it straight up in the air. And it's, it's because of the drop off. Mm-hmm. Just observable science, which is basically what you're conducting. And it is an experiment. I mean, science is about observation. It's basic science 101. And is it repeatable? And so what you're doing is science. And I think it probably aggravates some people that it's such a brilliant idea because of how simple it is, but it's going to be extremely effective. And I mean, like I said at the beginning, it's kind of checkmate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. You bring up a good point about the video. So the video is obviously going to be very important. I don't have all that figured out. I honestly haven't even had a chance to think about it. Because I'm trying to get everything else squared away. And trust me, for me, December is going to be here quicker than everybody else. But I will say this, we're going to definitely do our best. There are interesting issues which I've heard people bring up, which we need to just start talking about now and kind of eliminating. So we're going to have 360-degree cameras out there. You got to have a 360-degree camera,
Right.
especially if you're trying to see what the sun is doing, right? If you don't, then both sides could cheat.
Right.
So the globe side could just film the sun and say, yep, there's a 360-degree sun. And if it sets, they just wait until they can see it again and just say, here's the film. The flat Earth side could film a sky without the sun. Let's say the sun is to our south, which it can't be on a flat Earth. They could film in the north and say there's no sun. And so a 360-degree camera is going to be super important. It's not all we're going to have, but I don't know exactly how cameras work. Having Dave McKeegan is going to be important on our trip as a photographer, but I'm pretty sure a 360-degree camera is actually like 280-degree cameras, and they just put them together.
Right.
And so when you do that, you have a seam, right? You have a seam where one camera ends and the other one begins. And so sometimes people like to pull up those seams and say, oh, there's editing going on. And it's like, no, that's how the camera works. The good news is that I've heard the excuse of a fisheye lens way more times than I can count, and that will not come into play. We can have as many fisheye lenses as we want, because this is not about taking a picture of curvature. It's about filming the sun.
Right. Yeah, I get it, man. And once again, there's the God bless them, the flat Earth community. I feel like there are certain things that they have very valid arguments about, and that the ball has been dropped. And I totally agree on certain things. I don't necessarily believe everything that I've been told by NASA. I don't believe necessarily that our government tells us everything that's the truth and whatnot. But this flat Earth thing, it's like it's elevated to become the the standard bearer for every conspiracy theory and why NASA and the government lies. I don't know that that's necessarily the truth either. And there's some people, I have a cousin who's a major. He retired as a major from the Air Force, and he now works with Space Force as a contractor. He's a Christian. Interviewed him a couple weeks ago, and he's kind of just laughed and whatnot and whatnot. He deals with satellites all the time. He's like, I hate to say it, but it just the math isn't working. We don't live on a flat Earth, So there's a number of people that, and I believe him with all my heart, just because he's a great guy. He's a Christian, and obviously you don't get to become a major in the Air Force and then a contractor in Space Force working on all of our best satellites without a little bit of knowledge,
Right.
So it's very interesting topic. What do you think? I think now you have 7 global people coming with you. Is that correct?
Actually, no. So it's a little confusing. The scoreboard is now 8-2.
Okay.
We added somebody this week. To participate in the experiment is going to require more people than just people that go to Antarctica. This is something that's going to be a collaborative effort. And so the 24 people I invited on the flat Earth side and the 24 people I invited on the globe Earth side, if they want to participate in the experiment itself, they can participate in one of 3 ways. They can interview me on their channel, which is participating because it's just spreading the word. 2, they can give me an idea which will make the experiment more robust. I'm trying to plug any holes so that when we're done, no one's going to say, well, you didn't do this, Will, you forgot about this, you did this wrong. We're getting all that out of the way ahead of time. And the 3rd way they can participate is to go to Antarctica. So we actually have 3 people on the globe side that are going to Antarctica. One of them is Dave McKeegan, who I'm paying for. The other one is a YouTuber named Critical Think. And then the other one is a guy who just follows the flat Earth debate, who lives in Australia. Actually, is he in Australia? He's either in Australia or New Zealand, I forget. Those 3 are on Team Globe going to Antarctica. And then on the flat Earth side, Jaron Campanella has committed and Austin Whitsitt has verbally committed. And I'm trying to get them to say, Will, we're ready to go. Send us the paperwork so we can, fill out the application and get approved by ALE to go. So until that part is done, we're not announcing that they have fully committed because that's a huge part of it. Once they do that, I start writing checks because I'm going to be paying for them. So that's kind of where things stand now.
I got you, man. I got you. What about I do a little bit of video work myself. I'm not a guru like the people that you're taking. Have you thought about just a single camera on a pedestal that rotates slowly over a 24-hour period? So you had one camera view, no seams whatsoever. Have you thought? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, we're gonna need some sort of a mount. I think it will be an equatorial mount. That's the stuff that I haven't been able to research yet. But yes, that is one of the things that we're planning on doing, is having a mount that turns and follows the sun. So I think we would set it for, I don't know, maybe we'd probably set it for like 15 degrees per hour would be the speed.
Right.
And then if the sun stays in the camera the whole time, then that would be like, okay, that's a 24-hour sun. But if we're following the sun and then the sun disappears off into the west and then the camera is shooting blue sky, no sun, then that's a setting sun. So yeah, we're going to need that to prove either way what happens. We'll have something like that for sure.
That's awesome, man. And I think it is paramount to have some flat earthers on the experiment, right? You want them there. Cameras aside, if you can get someone who is big in the flat earth community to witness visually, observational, that, hey, yeah, the sun was 24 hours up there. That's a big deal. And I'm assuming that, their character would allow them to do that, right?
Yeah. So if the roles were reversed and some flat earth millionaire, I wish they had a flat earth millionaire. Just kidding. They do, but he doesn't seem to do anything that I can tell. If there was this flat earth millionaire who was like, hey guys, we're going to take this trip to Antarctica. We're going to settle this debate once and for all. If I was on the other side, I'd be like, hey, can I go?
Right.
And they'd be like, well, why do you want to go? Well, I'm like, I just want to kind of hold everybody accountable, right?
Right.
You could go there and you could, film the sun, turn the camera around, film the blue sky, say the sunset, and then call it a day. So why don't we just get both sides there to hold each other accountable, just to make sure there's no foul play, things of that nature. So I would actually be asking to go. If a trip was offered to me for free, I wouldn't hesitate to take it, but I would actually be offering to go, and I would either crowdfund or pay my own way. And so the fact that that's not happening is a little weird.
Well,
From the flat earth side.
Yeah, and I don't really want to say too much about that. I think it doesn't need to be said. I think it's obvious. And that's whether or not that happened with Rob Skiba is very telling. But anyway, yeah, I think though, like I said, I think it's checkmate. And listen, I'll be the first one to say, awesome, we live on a flat Earth. If it comes out that way, I mean, because things get interesting real quick, Things get interesting real quick. Let's get this debate out of the way. And hey, we live in a terrarium. And I know what you said about either way, there's a creator, but in this modern world of thinking, it's people would believe that there was a creator when there's a dome over this flat plane and whatnot. Probably, I would think, more so than just a tiny blue dot in this massive, ever-expanding universe, So I'm down with it either way. My money is probably it's going to end up being a globe, but I'm not really too much of a betting man, so I'm going to just wait for the results. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, there's something you may want to do. There's a growing list of YouTubers that are making public commitments that if the final experiment shows there's not a 24-hour sun, they're committing to deleting their videos where they are saying that we live on a globe. That's something you may want to do.
I would be happy to do that. How do I find out about that?
I will send you information.
Excellent, man. Yeah. I'd be
Someone
happy to do that.
created, cool. Someone created a website and they're tracking this. They're calling them the TFE commitments. And I will connect you and you can get your name added to the list.
Absolutely. And listen, I would do it proudly. Not only would I take everything down, but I would also very gladly do the mea culpa episode of I was wrong. Yeah. Yeah. So I'd be happy to do
Absolutely.
that. Happy
Me
to do
too.
that.
Me too. That's what shows confidence in your view and confidence that you're really trying to understand the truth.
I just want the truth. That's it.
That's right. That's right.
That's it. Well, listen, do you mind if I ask you a couple extra questions that are maybe not what you always get, but some questions that kind of come into play they are connected in some way, shape, or form. I'd just like
Don't mind at all.
I'd love to get your thoughts on it because I've spent enough time to watching all your stuff over the last weekend. I was in Atlantic City, man, and I was just, I'd work, but man, I was just like every moment I wasn't working, I was like, okay. And you're an awesome dude. But anyways, I've heard about your views about aliens, and those are on purpose. But I just have a two-part question for you. Are UAP/UFOs, whatever you want to call them, are they real? And if they are, who are the pilots?
Okay. Yeah, so I don't have a strong opinion on unidentified flying objects. But I mean, to me, it seems plausible that there are UFOs. Why is it plausible? Because you've got eyewitness testimony, you have pictures, you have videos. So I'm totally fine. And again, it's not nothing I've researched because it just doesn't excite me right now.
Right.
I'm happy to say there are UFOs. So then that brings us to the harder question, which is who are the pilots?
Right.
I haven't seen enough evidence yet that there is life outside of Earth. The stuff that came out, was it this year in Congress?
Yeah, this year, last year, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff was all the way from 2004 originally, so yeah.
That is the most compelling evidence I've seen that there is life outside of our planet. But where I currently stand, if someone just said, "Hey, Will, what's your best guess?" I would say that these unidentified flying objects are the government, some government entities.
Okay. I think that's a fair guess. There's a lot that goes into it, but it is a separate question because the craft are one thing, the pilots something else. So, okay. What do you think of? This is just a kind of a speculative question as well. Going to Antarctica, you've obviously had to have heard about Admiral Byrd and the exploits down there and how they basically got their behinds kicked by something. They described some things. Admiral Byrd said some things I think that he probably got in trouble for saying, and then he got decorated again. But anyways, what's your thoughts on that whole Admiral Byrd Antarctica trip where they went down with a massive fleet and came back pretty beat up?
I don't know enough about it. So what you're telling me is new information. What I'm aware of is that he was kind of an early pioneer in Antarctica and came back and explained that Antarctica is way bigger than people realize. It's completely untouched, it's completely unexplored, and we need to, continue to explore Antarctica. That's the extent of my knowledge on Admiral Byrd. And I would say this, everything I just said is true, right? Antarctica is not a Caribbean island size.
Right.
It's
massive.
It's the size of the United States, if not bigger. And so his statement was accurate. I would guess there's probably places in Antarctica that have been, unexplored.
Absolutely.
And that's exciting to me. It's a very harsh climate on either model, very easy to die, just like, climbing Mount Everest is very risky, right? I I joked a couple years ago. Actually, I don't even know if I was joking. I told my daughter that I was interested in possibly climbing Mount Everest. And she said, "If you do, I'll kill you." Uh, it's the funniest thing she's ever told me. So she's kidding, obviously, but she's just like, I'm not going to let you take that risk. People train and train and train. They try to climb Antarctica and they die. I mean, people who climb Antarctica, or sorry, climb Mount Everest, end up seeing bodies
Yeah.
in the ice, you know? So Antarctica is a very rough, harsh climate. It's very cold. There's limited times of year that you probably should visit. And so the idea of exploring it and finding new things, like there's some, you know, you've probably seen this, but there's some pyramid looking things in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, so you will be the first interview I've mentioned this on. Those pyramids are right by where we are going to be.
Really?
Right by where we are going to be. Those pyramids are in the Ellsworth Mountains, and we're going to be in the Ellsworth Mountains. So I love the idea of going and seeing what that actually is and maybe finding a door, you know? So I get excited about this stuff as well, but we're not going to make progress if we're just bickering over the shape. We need to all figure that out, and then we can make progress after that.
Well, you're intriguing me. You're making me want to get my coin jar out and cash it in and come down to Antarctica with you.
It'd be fun. Be fun to have you.
Something that comes up in this Earth model theory, hollow Earth. I'm sure you've heard about that. I don't know a lot about hollow Earth other than a few things here and there. Any thoughts on the hollow Earth model, which technically could present itself as a globular Earth with just hollow at the poles? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, have not looked into hollow Earth at all. The idea of a hollow Earth doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially not like significantly hollow.
Mm-hmm.
If there was like this maybe like tiny spot in the center that was hollow, that would be more reasonable to me than, you know, it's just like a very thin crust and then nothing else below it. Nothing I've looked into. I think, you know, the furthest that's been drilled down is less than 10 miles, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, but it just doesn't move the needle for me to get involved in it at all.
Okay. As an adventurous man who might want to climb Mount Everest, let me ask you this. Have you done any looking into any of the ancient megalithic structures? Like I went to Peru last year and Sacsayhuaman and all these things. You know, you talk about the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, whatever. Have you done any looking into that and any thoughts about who might have had a hand in building those?
Yes. So I'm going to give you an interesting tidbit of information that I just learned for the first time this year.
Okay.
And it's just a meaningless stat, piece of information, but it's actually Giza. It's actually the pyramids of Giza.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Giza. Okay.
I just went to Egypt this year for the first time to visit the pyramids, and I learned that everybody in the world pronounces it wrong. But they are incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
They are massive. And when we were there, I was really looking at them, and the stones are huge. And then I took a picture. I went to like a corner. It's hard to explain, but instead of going on the side of the pyramid and taking a picture, I went to the corner and took a picture. And when I did, I noticed that there were two angles on the pyramid from top to bottom that were perfectly straight lines, literally perfectly straight lines. That was mind-blowing to me. I have no idea. I don't think us as humans fully understand yet how they built the pyramids. And so I love it. It's fascinating to me. This idea that humans were dumb and now we're smart is completely false.
Right.
They knew way more than we give them credit for. And we are still discovering and trying to figure out and understand how they did things and why they did things. And it's exciting to me. I love it.
And some of the more modern day, people researching this stuff from chemical factories to whatnot, it is, wow. There's a lot of very interesting stuff about that. But just going into Peru and seeing those stones, how massive they were, it's always intriguing to figure out how did they move them? How did they get the perfect, curved joints and everything? I love it. I love the unknown.
Me too.
One last question for you. And this is a broad topic, so obviously you don't have to go too deep into it. But as a pastor, I think this is a great question. What's your thoughts? And maybe just a cursory glance at this because it is a broad subject. Thoughts of Genesis 6, the Watchers, the Nephilim, all these things, the angels coming down, and all that. Is there any? I don't know. Is there any particular thoughts that you have on that subject matter?
Yeah, there are. We don't have a lot of information, but my current take is that we have fallen angels. Mm-hmm. So this would be angels who no longer want to be, holy and righteous before God. And they come to earth, and I think they procreate with women. Yeah. And I think that creates some sort of a being where you have, whatever a fallen angel is in a woman. And I do think that's what the Nephilim were. And I do think it's possible and likely that that was one of the reasons for the flood, was to take care of that issue. So that's one of those things that we'll probably never fully figure out, but I do look forward to figuring out once we're in heaven, for sure.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. I've got just an index full of questions and answers and whatnot. In the meantime, just maybe try to not get distracted with flat Earth and round Earth.
I hear you.
We're involved in a battle of souls, and it's pretty crazy.
Absolutely.
Anyways. Well, Will, listen, man, I appreciate you so much coming on. I know you're a busy man. You've got this massive trip to plan, and if there's anything that I can do for you along the way other than pray and just hope that everything goes well and smooth and whatnot, and your safety, please get in touch with me anytime. Whatever resource I can bring to bear, I'm happy to do it. But I appreciate you. I appreciate your mind. And it's such a simple, awesome concept, but man, it's going to be effective. So thank you so much for bringing that into my life. That's exciting.
Absolutely, man. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Will.
Yep. Bye-bye.
There you have it, folks. This December, the truth will be known once and for all. If you'd like to support Will and the Final Experiment, be sure to check out his website and YouTube channel. All his social media links are in the description. And for all my awesome Brainiac listeners out there, if you have an idea to make the Final Experiment more robust, or another test that can be conducted while the teams are in Antarctica, feel free to pass it along to Will. And as always, feel free to email me at ryan@theryanfiles.com with all your thoughts and questions. I love hearing from you. We are 42 episodes in, and your support along the way has been amazing. Thank you so much. If you're new and interested in supporting the Ryan Files, stop by theryanfiles.com and become an agent of the Ryan Files. And of course, if you're just some huge, independently wealthy human out there looking for a nice tax write-off by buying me a ticket to Antarctica this December, well, I'd be happy to accept. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Stay amazing out there, and I'll see you right here next week on the Ryan Files.
The Ryan Files.